Hi guys, I'm Tom from IndustryMe, and today we are interviewing one of our Purple List artists, Nanette. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? How are you doing, Tom?
I'm all good, thank you. Good to hear that you're good. We'll get straight into it. So, you've released a new project recently called The Waiting Room, and I found it was quite rich in terms of its musical palette. What sort of inspired you to use a wide variety of sounds in this project?
Wow. I think I was inspired a lot by my versatility. I reached a point where I felt like I enjoyed making so many different types of music, and like it felt like I was boxing myself, just sticking to R&B. I mean, I love R&B as my core sound. It's something that I've grown up with my whole life, but I really wanted to branch out and see how far I could take my musicality because obviously I feel like I've always been a very curious spirit, even as a creative. I love trying new things that I don't fully understand. I love taking on a challenge. So yeah, the mixture of sounds in the waiting room was me taking on that challenge and saying, am I able to genre bend in the way that I think I am? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get you. And I think that's a positive mentality to have to sort of push yourself in that sense. Did you find that, you would go towards certain sounds when you were talking about certain topics or had certain feelings or emotions in a track?
I think it definitely leaned into each other. I mean, there's certain songs where when I was played the beat, it just made sense to sing about, this topic or whatever. Like for instance, when we did Tonight with Nasty and Taylor, when Taylor played the beat, I think in unison we all knew exactly what the vibe was. And so when I first heard the beat, the hook that came to me was the first line that came to me was, "You don't know it, but you're coming home with me tonight." It just felt like one of those records that you hear in like a club setup or even in like a restaurant setup. It's the evening, it's everyone's having a good time and you're scouting for your person, your future person, or just, a buddy for the night. You know how people get down. But yeah, I felt like, there was certain songs on the project that did help me lean into the topics, even with Move With Me. It's very like dance hall inspired, very Afrobeats dance hall inspired, but more specifically dance hall. And when Camara first played me the beat, it just made sense for me to wind my waist and sing about it. Like I was like, okay, this we're taking to the streets. Like I need all the girls to wind their waists with it. And that's exactly what we did. Yeah. But more than anything, I really allowed myself to flow with the music and not let myself be too in control of, how I do it. I think this project taught me a lot about collaboration and it taught me a lot about trusting other people's instincts as well with my own music. I think this was the first project where I really let a handful of people and all the collaborators had a very evident say in the music.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because obviously I'm not a musician myself, but I imagine when you're collaborating, you're going to be hearing lots of different ideas that you might not have thought of yourself, or you
Yeah.
yourself might not have tried before. And it allows you to diversify your music. So, no, I understand that. Yeah.
Mm, definitely.
So, we've talked a bit there about sort of the sounds you've used, but what was sort of the music you were listening to growing up that inspired sort of your sound now and the sound that you've used across your musical career?
Oh wow. So like I said, I'm a huge R&B baby. I grew up in a city in South Africa called Durban. And in Durban, there's an even smaller town called Sydenham. So I'm from Sydenham originally, and that was a very vibrant neighborhood that where there was always music playing. But because of the type of neighborhood I was in, it was mostly a lot of old school hip hop. So I remember I developed a love for Biggie and Tupac and Nas and A Tribe Called Quest and all these amazing rappers and stuff from a very young age because it's what I was hearing in the back of people's cars. Like everyone would open their boot and there's a huge sound system in the boot or the trunk. I think yeah, the trunk. And there was always music blasting. And I remember there was also a church close to me that was an Anglican church. And on the weekends, they'd turn it into like a karaoke hall and like a dance hall to raise funds for the church. And that's where I fell in love with old school R&B. That's where I'd hear your classic Tamia, your classic Brandy, your classic, Janet Jackson hits, your Destiny's Child, your Tevin Campbell, every weekend you can best believe Can We Talk was going to be played. So yeah, I think the city that I grew up in influenced a lot of what I listened to. And even like in South Africa, we're a huge old school R&B country. We love us some good old school R&B. So that's what I was listening to a lot of the time. I grew up on my mother and my aunt's CDs that they got when they were teenagers. So I grew up playing that. And I remember the first CD I listened to was Dance with My Father by Luther Vandross. So that was sort of like the vibe I was on growing up.
No, I could see from that you had a very rich musical education, and I find it really interesting how you sort of got it from all these different places, whether it be the people that brought
Yeah.
you up or sort of just people that you may not have known, some of them you may have known. I think that's really interesting.
Mm.
And yeah, and well, you can see that in your music, and you can see how that's influenced your music. So no, but that's very interesting where you got those influences from. I noticed on your Twitter X, whatever people want to call it, account, that you talked a bit about how you were told you did not to make R&B music, and sort of as a result of that, you've released this release independently. Did
Yeah.
you use these comments that were made towards you to sort of push yourself? And how do you look back on them now after like the success of this EP and the love that's been shown to it from fans and people who are finding out about you?
I did. I used it as motivation because I mean the comments about me not doing R&B, and I remember especially after I popped off of Calvin Momo's album in 2022, I did two tracks on there that really went super big, and after that it like intensified. People telling me, yeah, no, after this, you're not going to be able to survive R&B. Like you should just push the piano thing through and through. There's no space for R&B in South Africa. There's no space for a South African R&B artist in the world, And it was coming from a lot of places. It was coming from a lot of people, some people who were very close to me. So I had to really make the conscious decision if I was going to let it hurt me and if I was going to listen to these people because of the place that they held in my life, or if I was going to use it as motivation to prove everybody, including myself, wrong. Because I think I had to also reach a point where I gave myself a little mini TED talk and was like, you can do this. R&B is your life. This is what you came into music to do. Just because the path has veered on its own direction doesn't mean you can't, take any route that you want. And that's when I felt motivated to, I guess, just do whatever I wanted and make the music that I wanted to make, because I felt like boxing ourselves in genres as artists as well is so limiting. You're not always going to make one sound. You're not always going to feel like making one sound because we don't feel like listening to one sound all the time either. So yeah, I definitely took that as fuel, used it to motivate me and to prove people wrong because I love proving people wrong as well. I love proving a point. And when the project came out and it started receiving all this love that it's still receiving, I mean, even for me to be sitting on IndustryMe, this is a platform from the UK. So it shows that the project is traveling beyond my wildest imaginations, and it shows that good music will survive any storm.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm glad you've stuck with your guns, because I imagine that must be quite disheartening to hear people say that to you. And I imagine it
Yeah.
does, because you want to make the music you want to make at the end of the day. You don't want to just you're an artist, you're not, you're employed to make music, but at the end of the day, you're an artist, you're about the craft, you're about making an expression, something that you've put your passion into. You don't just want to put something out there just to make a quick buck. Obviously, you need to make money, but it's good that you have that sort of strength to sort of say, I don't care what these people want to say, I'm going to do what I want to do. And it's paid off and proved those people wrong. So, as you said, got what you wanted in that respect as well.
Definitely. And it's still going to prove people wrong because we're not done.
We'll go into live performance. Who is an artist that you've seen live that you'd sort of, or like a concert you may have seen from the past that you'd want to go back to and revisit that's had an influence on you?
Wow. Locally, I'd say my performances. Locally, my performances. I always look back at my last performance and I just always want to do better. But I think us in South Africa, we've had like the disadvantage of a lot of artists not stopping here for a while. And it's only now that we're starting to see like the really amazing international acts start to, recognize this side of the world all the way at the bottom of the world. But I remember growing up, I mean, I was obsessed with Janet Jackson and I still am. So performance-wise, Janet Jackson and I must say Beyonce as well were always like the key figures I'd look at, and Whitney Houston were always the key figures that I would look at personally. And I remember recently, actually, I found out that Janet Jackson actually did come here to South Africa, but that was before I was born. She came in 1998. So I would have loved to go to that show. But yeah, if we're talking about a local perspective in South Africa, I really do look to myself to better my performances and see how I can take it up a notch and take it up even further.
No, that's very smart that you watch your stuff back because you can always do better and you can always push forward. So I think that's good of you to do that. And yeah,
Yeah.
that is something that I have noticed that like for a while artists don't tend to tour. Well, the big international artists especially don't tend to
Mm.
tour in sort of South Africa or the Africa continent in general. But
Yeah.
that does seem to be changing, which is good. But yeah, no, that's it. That's interesting. I find that very interesting that you watch your performances back because I don't think I've had an artist say that to me before, but it makes complete sense.
Yeah, it takes me a while though. Like it takes me like a couple watches of just cringing, and then I eventually have to just sit down and be serious, and I take out my notepad and I say, okay, at this minute I don't like how I did this could improve. At this minute I like this, I want to keep this. And I think that's how you end up building a really cohesive set, and a set that you can enjoy as an artist too, because I always want to make sure that I enjoy what I'm performing too, not just the audience. I need to be excited to come on stage and do that full set from song one to song, however many songs I'm doing. Yeah.
No, as I said, it's definitely good that you do that, and it shows sort of a determination to give people the best possible show. So yeah, no, that's definitely good. So I watched in the preparation for this interview the video for Talk to Me, and I was quite intrigued by like the use of color and the contrast between the black and the white. What was sort of the message or the metaphor behind the use of color in that video?
Wow, this is a huge shout out moment to my creative director of that video and the director of that video, Shala the Unicorn, who's a really good friend of mine. And I remember after we made the song, we sat on it for a while, video wise, and we just really wanted to make sure that the minute we do start going into production, no one's going to feel like this was a waste. And so I brainstormed a lot of what I wanted for the video and all of that stuff. And every time I would play Talk to Me, it just felt like a super classic R&B song. And so I felt like I wanted to take that opportunity to give a nod to the R&B culture as a whole. And I remember the video that we actually took inspiration from was The Boy Is Mine by Brandy and Monica. And God knows I never meant to hurt you by Babyface and Tony Braxton. So in those two videos, there's scenes where like each person is on an opposite end of the wall. And it's almost like a conversation through the wall, that classic R&B feel. And so The Boy's Mind ended up becoming a major influence and inspiration for the video. And Shala came with the really brilliant idea to make it super original to us, to play with color, to play with contrast. We wanted to find a really simple way to make a powerful message, and we felt like black and white was the best way we could do it. I mean, even within love and within wanting to talk to someone, there's a lot of blacks and whites that go into relationships, and there's a lot of, contrasting ideals that end up coming together to make one cohesive union. And so Talk to Me sort of spoke to that. But most importantly, I really just wanted it to be a nod to that super nostalgic R&B feel, and just, give the props to the people that I look up to and that came before me.
You can definitely see sort of the contrast with those videos you mentioned, as you said, the sort of. But I think that's it. That is interesting how you've used the color there, because, like you said, relationships, they have their blacks and whites, their sort of light and dark moments. So I think
Yeah.
using that as a metaphor, I think was very good, because, as you said, as you can see in the video, it's like it's the clothing, it's the walls, it's your eyeshadow in the video. So it's a very interesting way to
Oh, which
use
I got
color.
so bullied for. I got like roasted for that eyeshadow. We loved the makeup, by the way. I still love the makeup. But I remember people were not feeling the makeup when we first put out the video. But it's okay. Also, Shala and I made everything on that set. Like Shala made everything on that set. We spent the whole night painting everything ourselves. She made the outfit for me from scratch. Like, and I remember the shoes, even my shoes that I was wearing, they were actually leopard print shoes. And we didn't have budget to get new white shoes. So we took like white acrylic paint. In fact, I don't even think it was acrylic paint. I think it was like varnish. We took like a white looking varnish and we just lathered it on those shoes. So that was really that video was a labor of love.
Yeah, no, you can definitely see that. I'd love the sort of imagination and like having like a smaller budget, but making the most of what you have. I think that's really interesting. And you could just ignore those people. You like the eyeshadow, it's part of the video. Just ignore them.
Thank you. That's exactly what we did.
You did, and the video did what it was meant to do, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
We'll go back to sort of like your social media. I noticed that like you're a very open person about sort of how you feel about the world and what's going on in your life. Do you feel like this allows you to have like a very close relationship with your fans, because you're sort of so open about who you are, and it allows them maybe to like relate to you in a lot of ways?
Definitely. Definitely. I do feel very close to my fans, and I even have fans that I speak to regularly. So when I host like little events and stuff, I have fans who are there all the time. So I've gotten an opportunity to get to know a little bit of them, get to, understand a bit about their lives and what, they enjoy doing and all of that stuff. So I definitely feel like because I'm so candid, it does open for that relationship, but it's definitely also a double-edged sword, because I'm not able to, be that person for everyone. I'm not able to extend myself to, the farthest heights that people would want me to. So it does end up getting me in situations where I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or I wish people didn't know this about me, But all in all, I think I'm really glad that I decided not to change who I am. And I decided to just, always be candid, because I feel like that also can sort of, I guess, break that stigma of celebrities being above people, or, feeling like I'm some demigod or something, when I'm really just another human who's here on earth figuring it out. And, certain things in my life might be better, I might be blessed in certain avenues where people aren't, but that doesn't take away from the fact that I am just a person living my life with a gift that I'm grateful enough to say people relate to.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think with a genre like R&B, you are going to be a bit of an open book. 'Cause it's a very emotional and passionate sort of genre of music, where you're being very open about what's going on in your life, whether it's general things or love or whatever you're talking about. I can imagine it's a double-edged sword because obviously, you know, sometimes, I mean, you are going to make mistakes at the end of the day. Sometimes you're going to say to me, oh, I shouldn't have said that. But at the end, as you said, we're all human beings. That's just part of it. And I think as well, you being open as well, I think is good because I do think there is a tendency amongst some people to sort of not to dehumanize an artist and see them as like a product, something for them to say,
Mm-hmm.
I like this music, I want this, I don't want this, I want the music. So to be human and to be yourself kind of pushes against that sort of ideology, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I never want to be treated like a product. So it's just about finding that balance between being the artist and being the brand, and also being someone that people actually could feel like they could come up to and have a conversation with if they saw me in person.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's a good ideology to have because, as you say, at the end of the day, you're a human being like anyone else. So you shouldn't be put on a pedestal. You shouldn't be seen as just a music artist. There's more to you than that. You just like with anyone else.
Mm.
One of the reasons I wanted to interview you was I did see a conversation you had, which I found quite interesting, where you were sort of talking about how people don't interact with like radio interviews. And then I saw somebody make a comment about how they thought music journalism wasn't being used to like the best of its ability. I was sort
Mm.
of just wondering, what do you think needs to change to make? Because I found with music journalism, like it is quite it's in a bit of a difficult place at the moment because the consumer
Yeah.
doesn't want to interact with it as much, especially if it's like, for example, newer artists. They always want it to be like a big artist. They
True.
people. So I was just wondering, like, do you have any sort of ideas on like how to sort of get the consumer back on board, I guess, or is there anything that like music journalists like myself or radio presenters need to be doing differently?
Oh, wow. That is a really good question. Thank you for that question. Obviously, I don't think it's a conversation that can be had in one sitting, but I definitely feel like from both ends, there are ways that we could create or that buzz again. I think it's very hard right now, like you're saying, for music journalism to, let me say, sort of thrive, because we're in a very like sensationalist era right now. Everything is about like the big boom, and what's the viral moment. Everything is momentous right now. And I think, music journalism has never been something that was momentous. It was always supposed to take you on a journey, I mean, if you look at how we all grew up on MTV, you followed an entire artist's career on MTV. It was constant. It wasn't just, okay, you're gonna see this person now when they boom on TikTok, and then you're not gonna see them again, and then you're gonna randomly see them when they boom again. It was a consistent thing. It felt like you really were on this journey with that person. So I think from a consumer's perspective, my point was the consumer needs to want to look at the same time. I think that there's a lot of music journalism that's happening right now that's excellent. There's a lot of curators that we have right now who are on the ground, finding raw talent. There's a lot of, I mean, you're one of them. You're on the ground, you're finding raw talent, you're researching, what the artist is saying, what the artist is doing, most importantly. And I think that if musos want to really connect with the music community and connect with artists, they need to just, dig a bit deeper. We used to dig deep. We used to go and get all the papers that had, the newest, freshest artists. We used to go and watch the music channels. People aren't watching the music channels as much as they used to. And I think obviously there's social media and all of that stuff to thank for that. But I think it's just that spirit of intrigueness and that spirit of wanting to know about what's hot and what's new and what's, sounding good has to come back from a consumer point of view. And I'd say maybe from a music journalism point of view, I definitely think we do need more platforms where people are focusing on the music and specifically the really important, intricate parts of an artist's career. I think a lot of artists are tired of being asked the same thing. We're tired of, there's always that question that everybody's going to ask you, what's your creative process like? So when you were going into this project, how was it when you were making it? It's like, I can't answer that on every single platform. That's why the consumer's not going to want to watch, because the consumer has already put it in their mind that, yeah, well, she's answered that 6 times before on, this platform, that platform, that platform. So why must I hear her answer the seventh time on this platform? So it's really just about, I think, on both ends of the scale, it's about digging deeper. I think there are platforms who are digging deep. I mean, I'm always like surprised when I get a really good question. Like even this one, I'm just like, oh, damn, you went through my feed. Like you went down, down, down. But yeah, I think the viral sensationalism is currently going hand in hand with people's time span and their attention. So if people could be interested again in things that actually make them want to read, it's gonna be a different story. If for instance, maybe people are gonna want to read about my upbringing in Sydenham and what this church was where I played music, and it was turned into a karaoke hall. How do they get there type thing? But if the rooms or the spaces aren't being open for artists to talk, very intricately about their journeys and give those little, interesting stories, then consumers aren't going to want to hear it. They're going to go back on TikTok and click a 30-second game that, appeases their attention span. So yeah, I just think on the consumer end, people need to want to start looking deeper, because there are a lot of platforms who can be amplified that do a great job at showcasing artists and their journeys in a way that doesn't look like clickbait. And on the journalism scale, I think that research. Yeah, research. Journalists are not doing enough research. And I would like, I mean, I come from a family where my aunt was a journalist. She was a news anchor and a music journalist. When I say I grew up on her CDs, she was literally using those CDs to produce shows on radio stations. So I grew up in a home that was constantly digging deeper for what's the next talent, what is, amazing. My mom is an artist manager. She has an artist manager background. So she was always scouting for fresh talent. She worked in a lot of different genres. So she also taught me that you will unearth something if you want to find it. Because
Yeah,
there's
no,
definitely not a lack, and there's not a lack of good journalists. There's just a lack of good eyes.
no, I think you've hit the nail on the head with a lot of those points because, like, when I conduct an interview, I want to do the complete opposite of what you said, which is I answer the questions people are expecting to answer. Because it's not interesting. As you said, you
Mm,
don't want to be asked the same question. And what I want to do with an interview is I want to dig deep. I want to find out why the music is this way, what's inspired it, what
yeah,
has got you to this point. As you said, the journey, because I think that is what is going to entice someone to an artist, like intrigue, relatability,
yeah,
understanding. So I agree with that. I agree as well. There is more of a transition in some cases towards much more instant, fast-paced content. Sort of, it comes at you and then it's gone, which is it's a product of stuff like TikTok, I guess. But I think there are platforms who are trying to sort of go into that market because they see it's successful. But
mm,
with stuff like this, you can't just, you know, you can use clips, I guess, to sort of advertise stuff and like say show a clip and then that takes them to the longer form piece of content. But I think
mm,
it's about finding a balance really. And I think as
true.
well, in terms of another point which I think is part of the issue, similar as well with music artists, I think there is a lack of desire for the consumer to sort of value the content because, for example, now
Yeah.
with the streaming age, it's so easy to get a hold of music, and I understand as well. A lot of people are going through, you know, they're struggling with money. It's a worldwide issue. I get that, but I think that people that at the end of the day, artists, music journalists, everyone does have to make a living. And the current structures in place for both artistry and music journalism isn't sustainable because if
True.
art if you're an upcoming artist, you need to be making a living wage.
Mm, very
Like
true. And
for,
on the other side, journalists, journalism isn't paying that sustainably currently. It's really a passion for a lot of people.
it's extremely hard. Like I'm the editor of this site and I'm trying to find ways to monetize it, but it's really hard. So,
Yeah.
and that I think does come down to the change in consumerism and again the value for things and not wanting to engage in things. But yeah, I think you have and we've had I think we've hit a few points there on why, and I think yeah, no, that I think that's been an interesting conversation there because I'm interested by what you've said as an artist and as a consumer.
Mm. I mean, like down to the smallest thing, like, yeah, you'll do an interview with someone and you'll see that this person has not listened to a single song of mine. They're sitting here interviewing me because they don't know my music. Like they're doing it because, oh, it's my job. I'm getting paid to do it. So you see, it's also that predicament, and that also goes back to researching. It's like you're able to ask me these questions, and we're able to have such a flowing interview because you actually know who you're talking to. Like you've actually listened to my sound. It's really disheartening when a lot of the times you speak to someone and you can tell off the bat that they probably clicked the first pinned video on my TikTok and after that they stopped.
Yeah, I know. I think at the end of the day, you're not doing your job properly if you do that. Like, if you're going to interview somebody, you've got to, you've got to go through at the very least, go through their latest project, listen to some of their other stuff, do a bit of research on who they are, where they came from, what they sort of stand for. It's
Yeah.
part of your job, really. And, for me, it's annoying for me to hear that because obviously I put my effort into this to make because I want it to be good and I want the artist to enjoy it. And it's disheartening for
Mm.
you as well because you're probably sort of sitting there like, I'm just wasting my time.
True. Like, what are we doing here?
So no, I get that completely. But yeah, as I said before, I think we've had an interesting conversation about that point. But I'm going to ask you one final question because I think the time is about to run out because you only get 43 minutes on Zoom, annoyingly. But I feel like at this moment in time, we're seeing a lot of talent come out of South Africa now and blow up in the music scene, whether that be
Mm.
R&B, Amapiano. Is it G Quam? I think I'm not sure if I've said that right.
Boom. Can you say
Uh,
G? G?
G.
It's like it's a click on the top of the lip. So like it's like a G. It's like you almost use your tongue and the back of your palate to make the sound like G.
G.
But yeah,
Uh,
it's Go.
I'll
GQOM.
let
Yeah, Go.
you say it because I'm just I think my mouth's gonna have a malfunction if I try to say it. I will have to learn how to say that properly. But
No problem.
yeah, there's a lot of, as I said, a lot of music from a lot of genres. But who are some like artists up and coming from South Africa who you think that our audience needs to know about?
Oh my gosh, so many. Oh wow. There's a beautiful R&B singer. Her name is Maya, Mia. She is amazing, and I think she's up next. Yamiko is also really amazing. She is also definitely up next. Oh, such relentless talent. I've got really amazing friends. Their names are Sticks and Nacho, Nva NVCHO. Nacho is like a producer slash singer slash writer extraordinaire. He's absolutely amazing. He flows on everything. Sticks is a super producer slash super DJ. He is also absolutely amazing. And yeah, that's just to name a few. There are so many people, so many people. But I'd say just off the top of my head, I'd go with Maya, Yamiko, Sticks, Nacho. I can probably even name more. Michaela Jones. Oh, there's an endless list of people. But yeah.
Damn, that's a lot. Seems like we got a lot more talented South African artists to find out about.
There's a lot of talents to unearth here, and I think it's so beautiful because we're a very diverse countries, and that reflects in the music. It reflects in the fact that South Africans are able to take on everything because our country, there's literally every culture you can think of here. It's really the rainbow nation, so it's very reflective in our music and how we're able to just make all these beautiful sounds.
That's good to hear. Well, Nanette, thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this interview.
Thank you so much, Tom. I did enjoy this interview. It was a blast.